Have you ever considered that your current situation is not an accident, but rather a divine appointment? Just as the sun rises and sets each day, there's a divine rhythm to our lives. Each moment, each interaction, each challenge we face is part of a grander scheme, a divine appointment that is meticulously orchestrated. Consider the stories of Moses and Esther from biblical times. Moses, a baby cast into the Nile to escape Pharaoh's decree, was rescued and raised in the palace, only to grow up and lead his people to freedom. Esther, an orphaned Jewish girl in the Persian Empire, became queen and used her position to save her people from annihilation. Each of them was positioned by divine design for a specific purpose and time. But this doesn't mean they immediately embraced their calling. Moses doubted his ability to speak, and Esther feared the king's wrath. They were human, just like us, filled with fears, doubts, and a comfort in the known that made the unknown daunting. They initially resisted their divine appointments. Moses pleaded with God to send someone else. And Esther initially hesitated to risk her life by approaching the king uninvited. But when they stepped out in faith, they fulfilled their divine appointments and changed the course of history. Just like them, you are chosen. You are anointed. You have a divine appointment, a purpose that only you can fulfill. Maybe you're in a season of waiting, of silence, of hiding. It might feel like you're stuck in a rut, but remember, this is a time of preparation, not stagnation. Perhaps you're resisting change, clinging to comfort, or battling fear. But dear friend, your divine appointment is calling you. It's urging you to step out, to embrace the unknown, to trust in the divine timing. So muster courage from the stories of those who've gone before us, those who faced their fears and stepped into their divine appointments. Remember, dear friends, your presence in this moment is not accidental, but divinely ordained. Your divine appointment is here, and it's time to step into it. Can you discern when preservation turns into stagnation? This is a question of paramount importance for the chosen ones. To navigate this complex spiritual dynamic, let's unfurl the tale of David, anointed to be king, yet hiding from Saul in the wilderness. Once upon a time, there was a shepherd boy named David. Anointed by the prophet Samuel, he was destined to be king. Yet he found himself pursued by King Saul, who was jealous of David's divine favor. To preserve his life, David took refuge in the wilderness. This was a time of preservation, a sacred season of waiting and preparation under God's protective wing. But imagine if David had chosen to remain in the wilderness indefinitely, too comfortable in the solitude and safety it provided. What if he had resisted the divine call to step into his destiny, to face Goliath, to ascend the throne? That would have turned his preservation into stagnation. His hiding place would have morphed into a cage, trapping him in a perpetual state of inaction. In our spiritual journeys, we too have seasons of preservation, times when we are hidden away, being shaped and prepared for our divine assignments. These seasons are sacred, necessary for our growth and protective of our souls. But there comes a time when God calls us out of our hiding places, out of our comfort zones. He calls us to step into the battle, to face our giants, to ascend our thrones. If we fail to recognize this shift, if we cling to our hiding places out of fear or comfort, we risk turning our preservation into stagnation. We risk confining ourselves to a cage of our own making. Trapped in a state of spiritual inertia, our divine missions unfulfilled. Recognizing this shift requires wisdom, courage, and a deep connection to our divine mission. It requires us to challenge ourselves, to step out in faith, to embrace the unknown. It requires us to answer the call to action, to obedience, to divine destiny. Your season of hiding was for preparation, but now it could become a cage if you resist change. So pay heed, chosen ones. The time to break free from the cage of comfort, to step into your divine assignment, is now. What if the battle you are hiding from is the one you were born to win? This question is not merely rhetorical. It carries the weight of centuries of spiritual wisdom, a wisdom that understands the paradoxical relationship between fear and faith. Let's consider the biblical example of Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples. Peter was known for his courage and his faith. Yet there's this one moment that stands out, a moment when Peter was asked to step out of his comfort zone and walk on water. When he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was able to do the impossible. But the moment he let fear creep in, he began to sink. You see, Peter's fear was not simply a reaction to the physical danger of drowning. It was a fear that had disguised itself as reverence, as humility. It whispered in his ear, "You are not worthy. You are not capable. You cannot walk on water. That's a miracle reserved for the Son of God." This is how fear works. It masks itself as humility, as reverence. It convinces us to stay in our comfort zone. It tells us that stepping out in faith, answering the call for greater things, is presumptuous, even sacrilegious. Fear makes us forget that we are divine beings, born to achieve incredible things. But here's the truth. Fear is a liar. It is a master of disguise, but its purpose is to keep us from our destiny. It is a wall, a barrier, an obstacle that we must overcome if we are to step into the divine assignments we were born to fulfill. So the next time fear whispers in your ear, telling you to stay where you are, to not answer the call because you are not worthy, remember Peter. Remember that he too was afraid. But when he kept his eyes on Jesus, when he listened to the call of faith over the whispers of fear, he was able to walk on water. Fear, disguised as reverence, can delay your obedience. You were born to conquer this battle. Could your silence be empowering the enemy? Ponder on this for a moment. Many of us find solace in silence, but there's a profound difference between the silence of reverence and the silence of fear or stagnation. The biblical prophets Elijah and Jeremiah offer us compelling examples of the power of words and the importance of speaking up, even in the face of adversity. Elijah, a prophet who lived in times of extreme apostasy, was never silent. He stood against the false prophets of Baal, fearlessly declaring the supremacy of the one true God. He used his voice as a weapon, a tool of divine power that brought about a spiritual awakening amongst his people. Then there's Jeremiah, known as the weeping prophet. Despite his emotional turmoil and the constant threat of persecution, Jeremiah never silenced the word of God that was in his heart. His words, even those of lamentation, were a testament to his unwavering faith and obedience. We too, like Elijah and Jeremiah, are armed with the weapon of our voice. But when we choose silence over sound, we unknowingly empower the enemy. We delay the fulfillment of God's plans. We stifle the divine word that is within us, the word that has the power to bring about change, to awaken spirits, to heal, and to transform. It's essential to understand that silence is not always golden. There are times when it becomes a shackle, a prison of comfort that prevents us from fulfilling our divine mission. It's during these times that we must remember that our voice is not merely a means of communication, but a conduit for divine power. When we speak in obedience to the divine call, we unleash that power. We become instruments of change, catalysts for spiritual breakthroughs. So let's question our silence. Is it born out of reverence and contemplation, or is it a veil for fear and stagnation? Remember, your words carry weight. They carry power. The heavens are listening, waiting for your sound to echo through the universe. Your voice is a weapon. Silence empowers the enemy, but your obedience releases breakthroughs for others. Do you sense that the appointed hour is here? The clock of destiny is ticking and the hour hand is moving steadily towards the time of action. Consider the story of Jonah, the prophet who initially ran from God's call, opting for the comfort of the familiar rather than embracing the unknown. His procrastination, his delay in obedience led him into the belly of a great fish. Only in the depths of despair did Jonah realize the urgency of his divine mission. Much like Jonah, we too can be swallowed by our comfort zones, our own great fish, if we resist the call to move forward. Our homes, our sanctuaries, can become our prisons if we let them. The comfort of silence, the safety of solitude, can be a soothing lullaby that lulls us into spiritual stagnation. But remember, the enemy thrives when we remain silent and hidden. Stagnation, my friends, is an illusion of safety. It's a warm blanket that suffocates our divine purpose. It whispers sweet promises of comfort and security, but in truth it robs us of the opportunity to step into our divine assignments. Our procrastination, our delay in obedience, can prevent our breakthroughs. Our silence can empower the enemy. But there's good news. When we rise, when we speak, when we act with boldness and obedience, we unlock heaven's resources. Our obedience, even if small or imperfect, initiates breakthrough. It may not always be comfortable, it may not always be easy, but it is always worth it. Like Jonah, we may feel unprepared or afraid. We may feel drawn to the safety of the familiar. But remember, God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And you, my friends, are the called. You are the chosen ones. The appointed hour is here, friends. Your obedience will unlock heaven's resources and initiate breakthrough. The time to rise, speak, and act is now. The clock is ticking. The hour hand is moving. Will you answer the call?